Hey, Flowmies, it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast. Well, tonight we have a friend of ours, a Flowmie that many of us love, Mike Schneider. He's just one of those good guys, always there to share a positive word to help someone out. And I wanted to have him on because he's gone through quite a bit of change with the business wise. So he started out doing windows. He bought a franchise, Squeegee Squad. So we talk all about what it's like to run a business with the franchise, what's involved with that, what the positives and the pros and cons are with that. We talk about hiring, about the different things that we look for when we hire, different things about, seeing how do you know when an employee fits into your crew, the benefits of keeping one on, whereas sometimes having those tough conversations when you know someone's not working out. And then we also talk a lot about his transition, because those of us who are Flowmies, we know he just started a junk collection business, and it's just really taken off. He's doing really well with it. And we just talk about that scary change to go from an established business of window cleaning that he's done for 9 years and has his name and brand and everything, to go start a brand new business, and what he did to make that transition as smooth as possible, and why he's seen success today. So a lot of really good information. I'm just filled with real interesting nuggets that no doubt you can use in your business. So we hope you enjoy. Now we're going to ask you to listen to Mike Schneider. Okay, Flowmies, it's time for another edition of the ITF Flowcast. And this time we have a special guest. We were able to wrangle Mr. Mike Schneider. How you doing, Mr. Schneider?
I'm doing well, Gabe. How are you?
Good, man. I'm so glad we were able to get you. I know
I eluded you guys as long as I could.
You
and
did.
when you came knocking, I just couldn't say no anymore.
Yeah. We it's getting expensive with all the detectives that we were hiring. So I'm glad that you finally said yes, because we were running out of money pretty soon. But thanks a lot so much for joining us. So we really wanted to talk with you. And also, just so you know, Flowmies, Corey hopefully will pop in the middle of this podcast. So if all of a sudden you hear another voice, that's who it is. Corey Klimas, one of our mods. So he's coming in. But Mike, you've done a lot. Since I've known you, you start off when I met you, you were a window cleaner. Now you do. What would your title? What would you call your title now, as far as what you do?
I opened a junk removal business. Similar to the franchises, the 1-800-GOT-JUNKS, the
Gotcha.
college junks kind of thing. That kind of similar junk removal household.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool. So we'll get into that. We'll talk a little bit more about why you made the switch and all that. But first off, why don't you tell us about your start in the industry? How long have you been cleaning windows before you started this other business?
So I, out of college, I had a landscaping company for about 6 years.
Okay.
Sold that. And then I was working at an interior and window company selling interior millwork, trim, doors, that kind of stuff for 6 years. Took that on, and then the economy kind of crashed. The business kind of just started to suffer. So I started looking for something else. And my uncle, oddly enough, said, "Hey, why don't you check this?" I went to a couple of trade, the franchise trade shows and stuff, and looked at a bunch of different things. Nothing really stuck with me as far as, snow cone machines and stuff like that. That really wasn't my. I always enjoyed the service businesses, so I started looking at those things, and then anything from carpet cleaning to window cleaning. And my uncle actually bought into a franchise. Said, "Hey, take a look at them." So I did the same. And about a year later, 2012, I started cleaning windows, bought into the franchise Squeegee Squad, and started cleaning windows and, running that business as of January 15, 2012.
So when you bought into the franchise, was it just you? Were you the Squeegee Squad, or did you hire employees right away?
It was just me to start. So the first year, pretty much, I worked solo, just kind of got my feet wet, learning the business. I had never really cleaned a window before that. So was basically their training, from corporate and stuff like that, and got going myself, got kicked in the gut a couple of times trying to figure it out. And like anything, you keep rolling with it and you figure it out. And so year 2, I hired my first employee. Year 3, I hired a second employee. And then when I ended up selling in 2020, I sold August 27 of 2020. I had 5 cleaners, myself, and then another office lady that was working full time in the office.
Very cool. Very cool. So how did that work? So what kind of training? Do they send a rep down to train you, or they just send you videos, or how's that work?
You go to corporate training at their headquarters, which at the time I signed up, they're based out of Minneapolis. So
okay.
not really friendly for, January window cleaning training and outside things. So actually we met up in Florida. It was me and a couple other franchisees buying in at the time. Spent a week down there doing all the different facets of it, the software, the actual cleaning part, customer service, pretty much the whole gamut that, for the business.
And how would you rate the training that they gave you?
It's good. I mean, in a week's time, it's hard to cram everything in. So it's kind of, you take back what you can and implement it, and then, learn as you go, kind of thing.
That's
like anything.
So how much of that original training would you say you held on to as you continued progressing in the window cleaning industry?
I would all of it. I mean, really? You just keep piling onto it as you keep going. Every year, every day. It's like any other business. You learn something new every day, pretty much. So you come across your first pellet triple pane job, and you're like, the heck, But the nice thing there is you get a nice wide resource of other franchisees. Some have been in it for 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, and you dial them up too and say, hey man, I'm in a house right now, I don't know how to get these windows apart, and they kind of walk you through it. And so it's kind of a big family. It's nice. It's like that is nice into the flow too. I mean, there's everyone's so helpful on these pages and stuff that you can get answers fairly quickly from people that are kind of hanging around Facebook during the day and stuff if you need to.
Very cool. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to hear because, I some of the people I've run into who have franchises, they don't always know what they're doing, and I think that's frustrating for their workers sometimes. I've talked to some who worked for a franchise, and then they're like, the guy didn't know anything about it. He's telling us to do all the stuff. He has no idea what he's asking us to do.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Gabe. Sorry.
No, that's it. Good.
No, I think it's difficult if you don't know the ins and outs yourself to, I think Anthony can speak to this a little bit too. Padlo, he was part of a franchise as well. If the person that buys the franchise is there just to run it as a business standpoint, it's difficult if you don't have the right people in place, I think, to run it effectively, because if I can't train someone to do the job I'm asking them to do, to me, it's very difficult on the employee as much as the employer too. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of why I wanted to get in the field. And originally, and my problem, I don't know if it's a problem, but preference, I guess, was I stayed in the field quite a bit. I liked working with the guys, and the girls and ladies, and I enjoyed doing that part of it. And when that's when I hired the office manager to kind of handle all the day-to-day inside stuff with the phone calls, and that was not my strength. I enjoyed taking the phone calls, but when you got so busy cleaning, it was difficult to field all the calls. So you hit those growth points where you just got to make decisions and transitions, and that was one of the big ones for me. Was when I hired my first office manager, I think it was year 3 or 4. That made a world of difference for me, just taking a big burden off my shoulders as far as, you clean one window, get 2 phone calls, clean another window, get 2 phone calls. It just got to be frustrating. I mean, I was at a point one point in time, I was not doing well mentally with, that much load, trying to clean and handle the phones and scheduling and all that stuff. So
I hired office staff probably about 4 years ago. So I've been cleaning for about 20 years. And of course, most of it, I was single owner operator. I never was really trying to grow my business. I had my customers maintain. If new ones came, I took them, but I didn't really advertise or nothing.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, it got to the point where I had a guy with me and we'd show up to the house and I was in the truck 75% of the time. And he was the one cleaning the windows. And I'm like, what am I doing?
I know.
I got to just hire somebody so I can be working on the.
I used to throw my helper the keys all the time. So you got to drive to the next house. I got to return 6 phone calls on the next, run, because that's the big thing is answering the phone. And when you don't answer the phone, they may move on to someone else. And I'm finding that in this new business too, even more so.
Exactly. Half the time, you'd call them back I'd call them back at 5:45 once I got back in. Yeah. And they're like, oh no, we already got somebody. Thanks anyways. And it's like you missed that opportunity for sure.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Would you recommend a franchise for someone? Because to me, I hear the word franchise and I just the hair stands up on the back of my head. I know it works for a lot of people.
Sure.
But what are some of the benefits? What are some of the cons to starting out that way, where you've got an established, company that that's your umbrella, so to speak?
I think if you are completely new to the business and looking to start a business, a franchise could be a good fit for you. I think if you've been cleaning for someone else it's a decent amount of investment up front to kind of, I mean, they have branding. Obviously, branding is a big thing. People see the name, they recognize the name. I don't know. I mean, it's just different for everyone. Everyone's a little bit different how they treat that. But for me, it was great, starting out, not knowing how to do anything. I had a resource of back people that I could contact and call. And before the internet was, I don't want to sound like I'm an old man, but, before Facebook was so prevalent with all these groups, where you could jump on and say, hey, I'm stuck here. What do I do? Or, so you're ready to go kind of hit the road running day one. You have the software, you have the branding, you have advertising outlets, you have a lot of the stuff where if, you have the time and don't have the resources to build it slowly, a little slower, maybe, I know people that join franchises that do a decent amount of money day one, first year versus starting out on your own. What I see is like a lot of the guys that work for me have went off and started their own businesses, but they have the foundation of already knowing how to clean, having the techniques inside the houses with ladder setups and, I mean, they know what they're doing from a technical standpoint. And then they try to, kind of feed the business side of it as well after the fact a little bit too, so.
Yeah. What is your philosophy on that when you've got someone working for you and they're wanting to start their own business? Because, some owners are like really hate that and they'll have them non-compete. If they do try to start, then they make a big, a ruckus and they get upset.
Yeah.
What's your philosophy on that?
Well, a lot of them started after I sold. So I didn't really have any that when I was in business, they didn't really start on me when they were working for me. They didn't leave me to start another business. So gotcha. I did have one guy, he left. He was a great cleaner, great with customers, and he came back to me and said, hey, I want to start a window cleaning business. And I was super busy. And I said, hey, I'll sub you all the work you want, and it worked out great that way. When Anthony was starting out a little bit too, and I wasn't mind me saying, but we talked and I said, hey, if you can't stay busy during, starting out, even though you've been in the business, and Anthony can attest to this too, for a long time, you're still cleaning for someone else. You're still starting your own business and you kind of got to get that rolling a little bit too. So, it worked out well for me. I was able to throw him work that I couldn't, possibly get to, trying to rehire people and stuff. So, I always want to see employees do better for themselves. So absolutely. If we can coexist and help each other and, not get in each other's way. I mean, I can't say I would appreciate if he went after my customers, my customer base, but
that's the worry, right?
Yeah. And I think there was enough mutual respect there where that didn't happen. We talked a couple of times and we, multiple times. I mean, we used to go out for dinner together and, have a beer and just talk business and say, hey, let's respect each other's territories. And and he was very good about not going after my customers. He tried to get all his new stuff. And he was a little bit farther away from me too. He was driving 40 minutes to work every day. So it was a good fit for him to keep out where he was, where I didn't really go. And he has a pretty good base out there and, works pretty effectively out there. So I always want to see the employee, the guys, ladies that work for me, them trying to better themselves was a beautiful thing. And, if we could work together on things too, I'd call him in and say, hey, I got a huge project coming up. You want to jump in on this? And, more times than not, we'd work together. So it worked out well for me. I know I've heard other stories of that where, they go after your customers and then it gets to be probably a problem, but I never really experienced that. So.
Well, would you say that you do hire on character?
Hire on character? Yeah. Yeah. I've always been under the philosophy of, hire the attitude, train the skill kind of thing.
Yes.
And it seems to have worked well. I mean, people that, honestly, a big thing these days is showing up, you can get people to show up every day with a good attitude. Yeah. I think you can, and that's not always the case. I've had people that clean for me for 3 months and just really never picked it up. And then you have that conversation to say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for either of us, Yeah. And usually at that point, like I've had those conversations with employees where I said, I don't know that this is working out for either of us. And you could see a sigh of relief come out of the employees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Recognizing let's part company and I'm going to go back to my old job. I think they were hanging on for my sake as much as they were, more than their own. And then it just, so I mean, literally there was an extra.
I find a lot of young guys, they don't like the confrontation. They don't like to give even if it's not bad news, If they think we're going to react in a way that might be like, why, or we might press them, it's like they don't want to say nothing, you know?
No, I think I've had guys that have worked in absolute misery. They hated the job. You know, they didn't necessarily, we got along well, but I could tell they didn't enjoy what they're doing. And I finally just brought him in and said, David, you know, if you're not enjoying this, he goes, when can I be done? End of the week, man. Just give me a couple more days. You know, we'll finish the week out strong, and then So it was an exhale for him too. You know, he didn't want to disappoint, but if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit for anyone. Yeah. So.
Well, and the reason why I asked about why you hire on character is because I think that's kind of it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we can't get burnt, but I think because that's more important to us. Sure. When we do bring someone in, if it doesn't work out, or if they're doing really well and they say, hey, I've got long-term plans of starting my own business. Sure. I have a lot less problem with them doing that because one, they came to me and told me right up. They weren't trying to do anything, behind my back. Yep. They weren't taking my customers and calling them, like you said,
leaving business cards when they're working there saying, hey, give me a call next time you need windows clean. I'll do it for $20 cheaper.
Yeah. And I did have one employee do that. He told the guy, hey, but I take it back. It wasn't Windows though, but it was window related. Okay. And another company that he had worked with, it was like a shutter issue. And so he had cleaned the windows, and then the guy was having some issues with one of these rolling shutters. And he says, hey, I do that. If you want, I'll come on Saturday and I'll charge you this and that. So the customer called me because he was a business owner as well. Yeah. And he says, hey, I think you should know, your employee came and offered this. And I don't know if that's something you guys do, if that's a service offer, he's trying to undercut you, which I appreciated him doing, Sure. But it wasn't that, but it was close enough that we had to have a conversation, and we had to say, hey, look, if you want to do something on the side, I have no problem with that. But my clients are not, you don't go fishing in my pond here. You have to respect that. And if you want to go start something, I'll support you, but you can, because now if you do that, and if you do a bad job, you've just given a bad reputation to my company just by virtue of you coming to him through me. Sure. And, now it could reflect, I have no control over that. So I don't appreciate it, and he totally understood. He didn't mean anything by it, but it was just one of those where I think, you're just not really taking, going in the future and seeing all the different possible implications of a decision like that. He's just thinking, hey, I could use some extra money. I know how to do this, and we can have that problem. But
I think I was fortunate enough, Gabe, to have a good enough relationship with a lot of my customers too, where they would let me know if something like that happened. I mean, so I never heard from any of them. You throw a tester out once in a while. You say, hey, Linda, I know so-and-so was out today. How did it go? It went great. And then you'd say, hey, again, these are people that I've had for 9-10 years, and you say, was there any interaction at the end with, leaving a card of his own or anything? So no, so, at that point, I trusted the guys that were working for me and subbing for me to the point where I wasn't too concerned about it. I mean, I'm sure at some point something was going to happen with some employee, but I was also fortunate to have a good core group that stuck around. I mean, most of the people that worked for me were anywhere from 3 to 5 years in, before they would turn over. And a lot of them left to do something. One went to the Coast Guard, say, hey, I signed up for the Coast Guard. Great. Awesome. It's a great career for him and, stuff like that. So it was sad to see a lot of them go, but if it's something that is going to better themselves, I don't want to get in the way of that. So.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I feel the same way too. I think if, as an employer, if your employees know that you're looking out for their best interest, sure, then they're willing to do more for you, because if you, they've all worked for someone who was like, crack the whip, get this done. This is what's needed. I don't have time for you to mess around. And it's all about them, what they can get out of you. Yeah. And then when you need something, they're not willing to lift a finger. Yeah. You don't have loyalty to that company or to that boss or manager, whoever you're dealing with. Because you're like, well, they don't care about me. They're just using me to make money.
And, I think that's one of the biggest things these days is appreciation. I think if employees feel appreciated, they'll stick. It's not always about the money. I was, you got to pay more. You got to do this, and that. We try to pay as fairly as possible. Obviously, and just a little bit above. Industry's never better. But a lot of times it wasn't about that. You bring donuts on a Friday, you buy pizzas at the end of the day on a Friday or whatever, just little things here and there, I think made a big difference for having them stick around, just end of the week. Hey, thanks for the hard work this week. Appreciate you having, you're working your butt off this week in 90-degree heat, they walk out the door with a smile on their face, or, little bonus here or there, whatever, it doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of dollars all the time. It's more about, I think, words and gestures and, little things here and there just to kind of keep them, all right, hey, Mike appreciates us, and, we're going to work. And you saw it, they worked hard for you, and you didn't have to babysit, or, very rarely was anyone ever late, or, and again, I was very fortunate with really good employees. So I know that's not always the case. We've all had our few where you're like, 2 days in, you're like, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
But for the most part,
I have a theory about that. So I have usually a 4-to-2 ratio. If you can have a 4-to-2 ratio, so because I usually have a 6-man crew, if I can have 4 solid guys, and then if there's 2 that are kind of iffy, those 4 can usually keep those 2 in check. Because I will never put those 2 together in a crew. Those will always be with one of the 4. And as long as I can maintain that, then even if I've got an employee who's probably, not a long-term one, maybe just there just to get a paycheck, which, again, I don't blame anybody who's
absolutely.
They want to work for 6 months and collect some money and then go on to something else, because it's not what they want. But they got to have someone with them to kind of make sure that the quality and the integrity of the company comes through, even with.
And I think I was fortunate enough to have employees that respected each other well enough to say, hey, I don't want to let Nate down while I'm out working today, so I'm going to try to keep up and bust my butt and do everything I can to make him myself as valuable as I can to him in that process. So that was nice too. And I really never had guys coming back saying, hey, I don't want to work with Joe anymore. I can't do it. I can't work with him anymore. But that was very rare. I tried to keep similar crews together that I knew gelled well together, but eventually you'd mix them up here and there if you got to, send 3 to a job instead of 2 or whatever. And I never had anyone come back and say, I don't want to work with Bob anymore. He's terrible. He's lazy. He's this, he's that, they always say it, they always pushed each other. So it kind of took me out of that equation a little bit too, having to, I'm not much of a whip cracker anyway, but it was nice having the other guys kind of go, hey, Tom, let's go keep up a little bit here, or whatever. And they would try their hardest to do that, to not let the other guy down. So,
yeah. And I think also too, when you set goals or you set standards for people like that, then they know what to strive. They just want to know what they need to strive to meet. And if you're consistent, as long as you're consistent, and like I said, you've got kind of a solid guy, at least one with someone who's needs some help. Then you've got someone who's like, okay, this is the standard we got to meet, guys. So we're not there yet. Let's keep going. Let's keep working, Well,
and I wasn't afraid to play the old man card either and tell him, hey, man, I'm like 48. You got to keep up, man. You're only 22 or something, You're not going to let a 48-year-old guy beat you, are you? So, no, we had a lot of fun too, honestly. We joke with each other all the time on jobs. Someone thought they were cleaning more windows. They'd throw a jab at the other guy. We'd laugh it off and, all right, I'll get you on the next house. It was a fun environment to work in, I think, and that was, credit to the guys too. They didn't take anything too seriously either when we're, ribbing each other a little bit. So,
no. And that's what you have to kind of have that environment, because if it's too sanitized, then it's not fun to work. It's not, like you said, it's a hard job, right? I mean, it's not. It's not roofing, they're not on the roof the whole day, but it is, they're outside, they're dealing with some difficult, if they're using ladders, it's going to be hard work. If they're using a water fed pole, it's going to be hard work. So you got to let them blow off some steam and then just have that camaraderie, if they can have camaraderie with each other, then that kind of builds the,
and I think at the end of the day too, literally at the end of every day, having the guys come in and say, hey, how'd it go today? Instead of saying, hey, where's the checks?
Right.
And you're like, okay, it went great, but, or, if they had an issue or something, but just to show you actually cared a little bit about how their day went versus just, all right, where's the money? Where's the payments? It kind of rubs the wrong way when you get that feeling like, all right, they don't really care about me. They're more worried about the money side of it. So
exactly. Very cool. All right, awesome. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you, you do have definitely that you carry that personality across of being a caring person, and I think when you deal with people who are business owners, you get a variety of people. You get the family guy, You get the kind of cutthroat guy who's in it. You
Mm-hmm.
get the guy who's very flashy and very, braggy as to what they're doing or how they're doing.
Yeah.
And then you get the people who are like part of a community. And I feel like you're very much a community guy. You're very much, how are things do, what role can I play to help a community, whether it's your local one or ITF, or like you said, even within Squeegee Squad, you're there to take advantage of that. Is that something that you've developed, or is that something that's just part of your natural personality?
So when I was about 11 years old, my dad lost his job and he said, "Hey, starting a landscaping business, you're in." And I kind of watched him. And it kind of drove me nuts at times, because I'd be like, "Hey man, I just mowed the whole lawn while you talk to that customer," and then he talked to the neighbor's customer and another neighbor's customer. And I'm like, but I kind of learned from him, like, the customer relations is so much, it's so valuable in any service, well, any business actually, but I mean, especially service business, I think. So I learned a lot from him growing up and stuff. And just, hey, it's not always about the money. Maybe you do something extra for the. I mean, we're washing, I'm like, "Hey, we came here to mow the lawn. I think I'm washing this lady's car for free. Like, how did that work out?" But he'd be like, "Hey, we're going to do something nice for this lady. She was saying she wanted to bring her car to the car wash today or whatever and couldn't do it." So, little things, I mean, it may cost you a few bucks in the long run, but, it gains a lot more, relatability with the customer service. I learned a lot from him on that, as far as giving back a little bit on those kind of things, and just little things here and there. And we try to do that with windows too. "Hey, you need this little extra thing done. Well, how much? Don't worry about it. It's fine." It's a $10 thing. But to me, it goes a lot farther than that with a referral, or they'll say, "Hey, call this, this company." Because, a lot of what we based ours on was, "Hey, we're not going to be home. Here's the keypad, let yourself in, do the windows, get out." So gaining that level of trust with people, I think, was huge for our business. And people would say that, we did a ton of business off Facebook groups, free, organic marketing. People would come on, "Anyone know a window cleaner?" And we'd have 10 people recommend us and say, "Give them a call." I leave the key, I'll leave the keypad for them. They come in, they do their thing, they leave, never had a problem. So I think trust with customers is such a huge piece of that. And that really just explodes the business. And then just having the right people in place, once the business starts getting bigger, where, I had guys with, like I said, familiar faces a lot of times, where the customer would see the same face 3-4 years in a row.
Yeah.
I heard that a lot from other people with a lot of bigger companies saying, "I had a great experience the first time. The second time I got a whole different crew, didn't recognize anyone, did not have a good experience. And the third time I had a great experience. And then the fourth time was awful. And then we just decided to cut ties." I think people are forgiving and understanding, but at a certain point they, are forced to walk away at some point, even if they know the owner or whatever. So I think that was a big piece for us, is having that stability with employees hanging around for a while, and, homeowners recognizing the same faces keep coming, and, they know the house, they get in and they get out and do a good job. And, I think people don't necessarily embrace change when it comes to having people in their house. So
no, I mean, I don't blame them,
Yeah, right. I mean, you want to feel comfortable, and that was a big thing for us, I think, as far as, running the business.
Well, that's definitely where we're at right now. We do have, like I said, we have some long-term lead techs who my customers know them. Some request specifically them. They don't want anybody else to come except for them. But some of our newer guys, I wrote an article for the AWC magazine about the B team syndrome. And that's what we're dealing with right now, where the customer feels like, "Oh, when the owner's here, when the guy who I know is here, that's the A team." But when he's not there, he says to other two guys, "Oh, that's the B team. And I'm going to get an inferior product," And it's something that I really try to hit with my guys. Like, look, whether I'm there or not, that quality has to be the same. It has to be, because that's what they're paying for, and so if you're going to take a day off because I'm not there, and you're not going to go and do the spot checks, and you're not going to, you're going to use a pole when you normally would use a ladder on this particular window, then, the customer is going to notice. And, we just had an instance where they came, it was what we call a premium package, meaning it's the everything, including the tracks, and the tracks were not vacuumed out right, Now this was a long-term customer. So I wasn't with that crew. I just I wanted to swing by and say hi. My intention was to show up when they were there And that way I could chat with the customer while they worked and just, you know, like you said, maintain that relationship.
Yeah.
But I got there after they had left. And so what happened is the husband was there when they were there, and then he paid them and they left. And then the wife came afterwards and inspected. And of course she was really upset, you know?
Yeah.
So she had, I didn't, without me knowing, she had already been texting the office saying how unhappy she was with the tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just drove up and she was like, wow, you got the message fast. And I'm like, what happened? I had no idea, you know, but it was such a good thing I did, because then I was able just to go and I had to re-clean almost all the tracks. And I took pictures and I sent it to the crew. I said, look, this is what happened, you know, but I don't know if I was able to salvage the customer, because she was very upset. And it was very much that, you know, look, if you're not going to be on every job, I don't know if I want you guys to come, is basically what she didn't say that, but that's what she was saying.
Sure. Yeah. And that's, you know, when I started and had myself just doing it, obviously, I mean, you got no one to blame but yourself if something's wrong, right? So you make sure it's dialed in, and it's your own company. I mean, that's a big difference too. I mean, it's your name, so when I had my first hire, you know, I was still there. So the customer would see me with the new hire and say, oh, okay, it's same crew. Basically, you know, Mike's going to check everything he does. But then when I got to that second crew where I can't be at both places at the same time, it was nice to have that face I had with me the year before, where the customer says, all right, Mike's not here, but Nate's here with another guy. So I know Nate from, you know, so that was the biggest challenge for me. And then when you get to 3 crews, you're like, you need that. I needed that for my sake, I guess, as much as anything else, that second person that they also knew, so you could still split. And that's what's hard. I think when you have a lot of turnover, it makes it very difficult for keeping that consistency or having that familiar face. And, you know, so.
Well, and the problem I'm having, I think, isn't so much because they're actually really good cleaners, but I just think, you know, they worked for a franchise before, and it's very much a, you know, splash and dash type business. And so it's hard to break out of that. You know, it's like when I'm there, they're detailed, or when they know I'm going to inspect, you know, I mean, they do a terrific job. I'm really super happy. So they have that capability. I just think sometimes they'll drop, you know, they'll shift downwards and go a little, and then they kind of fall into what they're comfortable or what they've known, which is working for these other companies who don't care. They just want you to get out of there as fast as you can.
And I think that was one of
my message is always like, do you have the time in the schedule? Take the time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're done early,
absolutely,
do a walkthrough. If you still got time, wash their mirrors for them. If you still got time, talk with them, ask them about their grandkids, talk, you know, but we're scheduling a certain amount of time. There's no need for you to get back into, you know, the shop early. If you can strengthen those bonds with that customer, you know.
And I think my first 3 hires, none of them had experience. So, and they were friends of someone who, like, my first hire had a friend who was a roofer. So great. He's used to heights. He's used to ladders. Bring him in, and no experience, turned out to be a great cleaner. He's still cleaning today. First guy was a great cleaner. And I kind of found as I went along, you know, and then I found someone like, hey, I'm in a pinch. I need to hire people like ASAP. So you find someone with experience. And I thought, this is great. You know, the training process is cut down in half, probably, if that. And then I found out the way they were trained is different than the way we train. And that's where we kind of butted heads a lot. And I personally, and it goes both ways. You know, if you find the right person, obviously you can tweak a few things. But for me personally, I always try to find people with great attitudes that were trainable versus coming in with, hey, this is the way to do it over here. I'm not changing the way I do it, even though it's different than the way you do it. And we kind of had a little bit of this here and there with, you know, that. So my preference was always no experience, and here's how we do it, you know, and start from square one. But
I've found the sweet spot is if you can somehow get someone who has about 3 to 4 months of experience, because they've gone through all the basic, you know, technical squeegee stuff. They've got that all down, but they haven't done something so long that they've got bad habits ingrained that you have to try and work out of them. So they're still malleable. And I've had really good hires whenever they're right at that, you know, like they work for someone short-term on a project. And then once the project's done, you know, they don't have anything to do. So it's not, a lot of times I have contacts with other cleaners in town, and they'll be like, hey, Gabe, are you hiring? I got a guy that I needed for this big project, but it's done now, and I don't have any work for him, you know. And
I don't think necessarily the way they did it was even bad. It was just different. And you know, when you're trying to get everyone on the same page doing the same things at every house, and you have someone just does it different, it kind of just throws a, you know.
Well, and the thing with window cleaning as well is the disparity between experience between the owner and the worker sometimes is not that different, you know.
No,
And so
no.
because of that, like I hired a guy who came in, he was awesome. I loved him,
Yeah.
very experienced, how we had a lot of the same type of integrity issue. We felt that we needed to do a good job. He was very thorough. He was very
Yeah.
detailed. However, he was used to running a business a certain way. He had his own business in the past. He had worked for another company that did similar to him. So it wasn't that we bumped heads. It was just more, it wasn't in his flow, the way that I ran my company.
Yeah.
And he kept trying to kind of sell me on stuff. And I'm like, you're asking me to change my whole business model. And I'm not really in that right now,
Yep.
and he worked for me, I'd say about maybe 6 or 7 months. And then he ended up moving anyways for other reasons, not just for the job.
Sure.
But we could tell that mutually we're like, oh, you know what? I think our time together has kind of run its course. I think he's better off going back to where he was used to, and it fit within his mindset, because now he could just kind of be himself and run the way that he's meant to. And then I can keep my business the way that I want it.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep.
So when it comes to hiring, you said you have like a few, because you had some people who had worked there for a long time. So the new guys, did you have an issue with turnover, or was it those kind of employees, or were they there for a little bit, even if they were still kind of newer?
Toward the end, it got to be a little bit more challenging. I think like the last 2 to 3 years, probably it became more challenging finding, and I think it was more on my end where I would sit them down and say, this isn't working out, And again, I think part of that, like you touched on earlier, was just the fear of like having that confrontation with saying, hey, I absolutely hate this work. I know I'm not good at it, but I don't want to tell you, like, I want to leave. So I think they felt bad. But turnover, at the end, I think I was going through maybe 2 hires to find the next, rock star kind of. So, not horrible, but, you invest that time, I think that month to 2 months, and I wasn't one to pull the trigger usually in a week, where even though sometimes your gut tells you that first week, like, this probably isn't going to work. I would probably err on the side of hanging on too long before I would sit them down and say, I think as well as I do, this isn't working out great. And like I said, the one guy's like, when can I be done? I'm like, you can do it right now, I guess, if it makes both of us feel a little bit better. But yeah, I would say, by, week 4, you kind of have a pretty good idea if, I had actually a family friend of ours had a daughter that she graduated high school, and she called me up, and it's a good family. So she calls me uncle, she's Uncle Mike, I'm looking for a job. I had her out in 2 days. She was just killing everyone. Some people just have a knack for it. They pick it up.
They do
like nothing.
Yep.
And then some people just can't really get the feel of, and no matter how much time you spend, it just doesn't click, I guess, and, everyone's like, oh, it's not rocket science, but there's a technique to it. There's definitely in repetition, I always think, hey, 1,000 windows in, if it's not, clicking, it's probably not going to click. So, and then, that's where I would start to see the frustration from the crew, where they would say, hey, my best guys would come back and say, I don't know, we're trying everything we can. Anthony came with me, when he was working once. I said, hey man, come tell me if I'm crazy. Like, am I just not training this guy right? He spent, 3-4 hours at a house with him, and he's like, dude, it ain't happening, man. I'm like, well, that's what I needed. I needed, validation for my decision, to pull the plug on it. So,
well, I think that's pretty accurate what you said about a month. That's what I whenever I hire someone new, that it's a month probation.
Yeah.
So no promises past that month.
Sure.
And that because I figure, the first week or 2, they're doing their best. They're working hard. They're pulling all the stops out. By week 3 and 4, they've kind of settled a little bit. So if there's any bad habits that are going to come out, or they're going to, the excitement of the new job is going to be gone.
Yep.
So if now all of a sudden they realize this is not really the job for me. It's going to start showing in those weeks, you know. So after a month, we sit down and reevaluate. Okay, well, what do you think, man? Is this going to work out? You want to do it, you know, for real? And or I can tell them, hey, I don't think it's going to work out. Of course, I had one guy, it was one day of work. And we got done and I was like, hey, this is not going to work out. And he was like, no, I know.
In almost 9 years, I never had a no-show at break. You know, like the guy went to the gas station, never came back. So I've heard those stories before where, hey, I'm going to go get a drink, or we got to use the bathroom or something or whatever. And, you know, never showed back up again. I never had that. So I'm fortunate there.
That is good. Yeah. I had one guy who, a young guy, and he'd called me, he was moving from across country. His dad owned a window cleaning company. He had worked for his dad for like 4 or 5 years, you know. And I was all excited, real professional sounding, you know, he had a great resume. He was just very professional looking. And he came in and we met, and I mean, just great personality. He just looked, I'm like, oh man, this guy's going to fit in great, you know?
Sure.
And I gave him a route, you know, I worked with him the first like 3 or 4 jobs, just to kind of show him the ropes and show him how we did things. And then I gave him like, I think 5 or 6 commercial jobs, really easy commercial jobs in the afternoon that he could do.
Yeah.
I went and did my thing, came home, you know, he came and turned in the keys, asked him how things, oh, it's great, you know, blah, blah, blah. No showed the next day. Calling and texting him, nothing. No showed the next day. Called and texted nothing. And I'm like, well, I guess he's not showing. You know, he finally called me because his first day was on Monday. He finally called me on Friday and apologized for no showing, but that he said it was too hot because he was from the East Coast. And it wasn't even a hot day for us. It was just hot for him.
Yeah, I'd say Arizona, you got to be,
And then he said he wasn't used to working that long of a day, it was only like a 7-hour day. Ooh. But then I'm like, well, you know, if he's working for his dad, he probably had a pretty cake little route, you know, and schedule. He probably had the son, you know, the firstborn son benefits of working there. But yeah, he ended up doing something else. And he, you know, I just told him, I said, look, if I'm going to give you some advice, you know, first of all, if it's not going to work out, it doesn't bother me, you know.
Right, absolutely.
That's what hiring is. We're trying to work. I said, but if I can give you some advice, don't ever ghost an employer again.
Yeah.
I said, I'm a nice guy. So you know, if you want to still use me for a reference, I'd be happy to, because we got along well. The work you did was good. I said, but you know, if you would have just called me the next, you know, that evening and said, hey, this isn't going to work out, I would have been fine with you not coming the next day, but you're ghosting me. I said, that was disrespect, you know. And then I had the week scheduled expecting, you know, this crew to have 2 people, and it was only 1. So we ran late that day. So I had no idea you wouldn't return my calls. I said that just please. I know that's something that young people do, and it's like acceptable. It's not acceptable in the business world.
No. And I think part of that comes about before too, like, you know, people don't want confrontation, you know.
Yes.
How many times have you gotten a call from an employee saying, hey, I'm not gonna, you know, this isn't working out? Text all the time. Text. It's always a text. Never a face-to-face. Come in, have a face-to-face conversation and say, hey, this just isn't working out. I appreciate the opportunity, but it's not working out. Never a phone call. At least in my experience, it's always been, hey, I'm done. You know, I'll bring my uniform in, you know, tomorrow. Never, you know, and then at some point you got to face the music, because I'm like, hey, if you want your check, I need my stuff back. So, you know, I mean, you're going to see me at some, and again, I'm like you, I'm not going to sit there and holler and scream and, you know, raise a ruckus about it. If it didn't work out, that's fine. But I think it's a respect thing. Just have the respect to have that conversation and say, you know, it's not going to. So I gave one of my guys, he was probably 2 weeks in, and he said, can I take my stuff home and practice at my house? I said, absolutely. I saw his mom on church Sunday. She goes, I would never pay for that service. I said, we're working on him yet. Give us some time. It's only 2 weeks. Give me another 2 weeks. He should take his stuff home again and try again. She comes back. She goes, I would never pay for that service. I'm like, I get it. He's not on his own yet. I appreciated his, you know, the drive to at least try to improve, you know, but mom wasn't really on board with the quality.
No, I had a young guy, and I like this kid so much. He's such a nice kid. And in fact, even still, I'd seen him after this was all done. And we had a great conversation. You know, we're like, oh man, we really got to do some lunch, which we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
But he came to work. He worked for me for about 2, and he really wanted to do it. I mean, he already had visions of starting his own business in the future. He had other family members for window cleaners, I think, and he just knew a lot. You know, this was kind of his route that he was going to go. But he was, I don't know if it was ADHD or what it was, but he was locked in on how he wanted to clean that window. And it did not matter how much training I gave him and how much like one-on-one attention I gave him. He would
I think I
always
remember a
revert
post
back.
about this. No, did you post
Yeah.
about this? Yeah, I
Well,
know
no,
exactly.
I think it was different though. I think that one
Okay.
was different, but it's
Okay.
similar situation.
Okay. Yeah.
But he and we went to this one house and it was a late. It wasn't a construction cleanup, but they had painted, so there was scraping. So
Yeah.
I told him, okay, look, we you know, this it's like 3:30, you know, so we've got about 2 hours. We got to get this done before it starts getting dark. So this is how we scrape. You know, I gave him a demonstration. We go up like this, you know, wet the window.
Yeah.
So I go do my one. I come back because he's still on this one window that I had left, and I had already done like 5 or 6 windows. And I come back, and he's doing this like this all over. And I said, no, look, you're taking too long. This is what I'm telling you. You got to do this, you know, full long straight. You know, I demonstrated him like that. I had him do it in front of me. I went and did it. I do another 5. I come back. He's still on that same window. And he's like, and it just hit me. I'm like, no, this guy can't, it's not that he's being disobedient. He literally cannot control himself.
Incapable.
He was incapable of doing it the way there was something mental that he had. It was like a ADHD.
Yeah, it wasn't disrespectful, OCD. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so after, because I mean, we were there till like almost 7. You know, we're working in the dark because I ended up having to do all the windows because he could not do it. So we had a conversation. And I was real kind to him, but I was also very straightforward of just, you know, look, man, I told you to do it this certain way, and why couldn't you do it? And he was just like, I don't know. And I said, look, you know, I can tell this is something more than just, you know, and like I said, we ended on amicable terms, but it just, that was when I realized, okay, this isn't a training issue. This is his issue.
Yeah.
And this is not the field for him, because
no, and that's hard to overcome when, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's part of management, right? I mean, you have to identify that. You have to know your employees. You have to identify their strengths and help them to be in the best position to do their best. And be honest when there's some that just aren't going to work out, you know, and have those tough.
No, that's it. Right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you got to face the music and say, hey, you know, I don't know if it was a bad hire, but it's a hire that's not going to work out. You know, you can have some guys that look, or again, ladies, guys that look the best on paper you'll ever see, that end up being the worst employees. And some you go, I don't know if I should even give this person a shot, and they end up being your best employee. So there's no, it's a gut thing, and you know, you're right, you're wrong. So
well, speaking of making tough decisions, so you decided to sell your company, which you had for how many years?
It was going on 9
years. Okay, so that's a solid time to own a window cleaning business. So you're established. Like you said, you've got the branding because it's a franchise. You've got great people working for you, and then you decided to move. So why don't you let's go into the mind of Mike here, and what made you? I know it's dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
This is a PG podcast, so please.
Absolutely.
But what was behind that decision, and how has it worked out for you? Why don't you fill us in?
So my wife and I started. My wife is from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
We live in Illinois right now, that's a whole nother podcast. But anyway, so we started talking and said, my daughter's going to school in Grand Valley, and closest reference, Grand Rapids, Michigan. She's going to be a junior this year in college. She this summer said, 2 summers ago, said, I love it up there. I'm not coming back, you know. And we kind of sat down and thought, what would it look like if we moved, you know, to Grand Rapids, or not Grand Rapids, but Michigan, you know, northwest or southwest Michigan, where she's from. She's got a lot of family up there. We love the area. And so we said, well, you know, the anchor right now, well, my wife is a teacher. She loves her job. So that was part of it too. But the anchor was the business. It's like, well, you own a business, you know, you can't just pack up and leave. So it kind of came down, and my renewal was coming up for the franchise at 10 years too. So it was just kind of, everything kind of came together all at the same time. And we thought, let's see what happens. Put it for sale. If it sells, maybe it was meant to be. If it doesn't sell, then, you know, we stick with it and keep moving on. So put it up. Probably about a year in, you know, I had it with a broker, and he had a couple nibbles on it, but nothing that I really, honestly, one person, I didn't like the person. So I didn't feel comfortable. I was trying to think of my employees a little bit too and say, I don't think they like him. So I just, and the offer was, nothing great either. So anyway, fast forward about a year when I kind of just thought nothing's going to happen. And, broker called and said, hey, we have someone interested. And the talks progressed and got to the point where there was an offer and counter offer. And then, we came to an agreement and thought, well, now it gets real. The talk about moving gets really real because, this is going to be off our plate now. So no, I shouldn't say off our plate because I enjoyed the business. I loved it, but I thought it's kind of senseless to just pack up and move and leave it if, someone else might want it, or just keep moving with it. Cause it was, I enjoyed it. We did well with it. So yeah, we sold, and that was August 27. My son is an 8th grader. And we kind of sat down and had that hard conversation and said, okay, the business isn't really a factor anymore because it's gone, it's sold. And we kind of just said, maybe 4 years yet, so when he graduates 8th grade or high school, we'll make that move at that point, probably then. So
Very cool.
we were close. We were house hunting and kind of looking and peeking and all that, and just couldn't pull the trigger on it. We kind of had that conversation with him, and there's some nuances with him as well that we thought is just the best thing at this point right now. And that's not to say it couldn't still happen, maybe not even next year yet, but at this point in time, we kind of thought it's the best thing right now for his best interest. My best interest would be to leave, but that's not really what matters. It's, try to do what's best for him. So
is the business in Michigan, or is it in Illinois?
No, it's here in Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that something that you're going to transfer over to Michigan when you guys move?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, that's a nice thing. So that, we're going to probably get into that in a little bit, but the differences between window cleaning and junk removal are, there's some similarities, but there's also some differences. And one of them being, window cleaning, we probably had a book of maybe 1,400 customers that regularly used us. Junk removal, you go clean out someone's house, there's nothing left to clean out. So you're not going to, you may not see those people ever again, or, we have some regulars already at this point that have called 2 or 3 times, said, hey, can you come pick this up? I need to get rid of it. But, the bigger jobs, you don't, they're kind of one and dones for the most part, so
sure.
You don't have that book of business sitting here necessarily. You're obviously trying to establish that branding and, a name for yourself here where people will call you if they need it, but there's not as much repeat business in this business as there is with window cleaning. So
sure, that makes sense.
An easier transfer. Again, you kind of got to reestablish yourself. And that was one of the things to springboard off with, Squeegee Squad. When I opened Junk Squad was, I was able to leverage that a little bit I had a 1,400 customer base that I could,
you can email and say, hey, just so you know.
Right. Yeah. Hey, we said we're moving. We're not. So we're still around. But now I own this business instead of the old business, the old business, but here's what I'm doing now. And, I got some feedback off that. And just in the Facebook groups too, they knew my name associated with Squeegee Squad. So now they associated with Junk Squad, and we're happy to refer me in. If someone popped on and said, hey, I need a junk removal company. Well, hey, we use Mike with Squeegee Squad. He owns this new business. Use them, so there was a good leverage there with that. And but yeah, so that's we're here for a little bit yet anyway.
Do you have employees, or are you doing all the work yourself?
I started doing it myself and then realized I'm far too old and weak to keep, you walk into a house, I hear all these guys on these, you got your subsection of Facebook groups for junk removal too. I work by myself. A lot of guys working by themselves. I'm like, how in the world do you get a, sleeper sofa out of the basement without taking a chainsaw to it down there or something? So I started off doing the smaller jobs myself, curb pickups, garage stuff, you could throw in the back of the truck without having to move through people's houses. But then once the bigger jobs started coming in, then I started, one of my old employees actually wasn't working. He was waiting to get a different job and was available. And I said, hey, you mind helping me out while you're around? He said, absolutely, I'd love to. So he's still around now. So it's me and him right now, kind of running full time. And the thing I like about this business too is one of the benefits of it, I think, is it's a plug and play. Like there's no ladder training. There's no, hey, here's how you fan a window. Here's how you straight pull a window for starters, if you even wanted to. It's all that stuff over there has to go over there in the truck, get it in there, and don't bang up anyone's walls or, be conscientious of the house. But for the most part, it's just, do a Tetris puzzle in the truck with all that stuff and get it in there. So it's easy for me to grab, my wife's a high school teacher, like I said, I'm like, hey, give me some football player names that are big burly guys that have really good common sense. She's like, here's 5 people you can call. So I called her, I'll get the name from, a lot of them are family friends too. And I'll just threw out a group text. Hey, you don't want to work tomorrow. And, you get 3-4 responses saying, hey, I can be there, so it's a lot easier to, if you get a bigger job to do a plug and play versus, if we had a day of rain and we got behind, it was difficult for me to call someone, a family friend, say, you want to go clean windows tomorrow?
Of course. Yeah.
There's even water fed, Paul. There's techniques to it. You don't just throw it in someone's hand and go, make the windows clean. They don't know what they're doing without a little practice and stuff too. So,
yeah,
and I wasn't worried about, you don't have the ladder training involved. And, I think with window cleaning, to be somewhat comfortable, I would think you almost need a week to 2 weeks of solid training to kind of get a feel for it, where this is, like I said, park on the street, or meet me at the shop at 7, we're going to go throw stuff in a truck. So yeah, that's what, to me, that's one of the benefits that I've seen in this business so far.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. I think that, like for me, I'm such a deliberate person, the thought of just starting a whole entire different business is just really, like, I don't want to say terrifying, but it's just something that I don't think I would, even I know you didn't go fast because I know this was a year's type thing where you were building up to it. But for me, I almost would need like 10 years to do something like that, to do such a totally change.
So I sold August 27, 2020. I stayed on for 9 weeks after that with the company just to kind of, get the new owners kind of up to speed a little bit and stuff. So it was about beginning of November, we were off. I took that month off. We went to Florida and I was sitting by the pool, just listing different businesses I think I could, potentially get into, and had about a list of 3 to 5 and started narrowing them down. And I guess one piece of the puzzle I forgot to tell you was one of my window cleaning customers for a long time was a franchise owner of a junk removal company that I became really good friends with, talking to her in the house. And we'd always talk franchises and business and stuff. So after we were in Florida, I thought that might be, and he sold his business 2 years ago. So I thought, I'm just going to see if he wants to go for breakfast. That was one of my top 3, was the junk removal thing. So went out with him, we talked. And since then, I said, kind of gravitated toward this business. And since then, he's been a great mentor for me. Just, hey, I mean, I'm doing a lot myself, but not, if he wasn't around, it would be a lot more nerve-wracking probably to, and he's been so gracious with his time and energy. And, he's first hot tub we took out, he meets me there, helps us do it, just to figure out the nuances of it and stuff. So he's been great. So it's not like I've been doing all this myself either. Mentors are such a huge piece of this for a lot of new businesses, like into the flow, I mean, you get new business coming here, and all the people, Beba, Anthony, Corey, I mean, there's so many, I can't name them all, but jumping in with answers to questions, or, hey, how would you price this? That's the age old question when you're starting out. Right. How do you price this? He's probably gotten 50 pictures from me on how do you price this? And, he says, and then you start figuring it out, and you take your lumps on a couple jobs, and, that sectional sofa that you thought was going to be very little room in the truck, you throw it in, you're like, holy cow, it's half a truck. I totally undercharged. And now the next one, so, you take your lumps and you figure it out. And I think for me, I got a little bit at the end, a little complacent, almost just kind of felt like this is as far as I can take this thing, and just didn't. So to start over a little bit was kind of reinvigorating for me, where I kind of got the juices flowing again a little bit, and, finding things, because we had our own software with the franchise and stuff. So, everything going on, finding software, that works for your company, and getting that started, and just, basically, starting from scratch, doing everything that, getting a logo, you saw me post a long time ago, hey, what do you guys think? Who's got a smart name for a business or something? And, so all of it, it's been kind of fun, it's kind of gets the juices flowing again, gives you a little repurpose, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I think that makes a big difference. I think, having a mentor who is experienced, that you can draw the experience, their thoughts from, that does make a little bit easier, because then you feel like, hey, I'm not in this by myself, and I think that's
Right.
what ITF is meant to do. It's meant to provide that community, that mentorship that you have available to you as someone who starts a new window cleaning business can draw from, so they don't feel so alone.
Well, and the interesting part of that for me too, Gabe, is when I talked to him, I said, hey, I don't want to overwhelm you with questions. And he said, you know what? It's kind of given him a little purpose again too, I guess, because he sold 2 years ago, retired, and he goes, I'm enjoying giving my knowledge to someone else now. So it was kind of cool, he's like, ask away, or he calls me without even me calling him sometimes. Hey, how's it going? What are you seeing? What are you, and I say, hey, August is, a little bit slower than I anticipated. Well, it's like windows too. Family vacations, back to school, it's just kind of that ebb and flow of the business too, where it's the same in junk removal. You're going to see a little bit of a slowdown in August. And then, once kids are back in school, all right, get all that basement stuff cleaned out again, or let's get rid of the pool or whatever. So it's nice to have that sounding board for a new business that I don't know much about, or, I'm just learning. So it's been good for me.
But I think what your friend said is true. Because actually we just had a conversation with Phil on because he's the Flowmy in Florida who started his junk collecting. We messaging back and forth a little bit. Yeah, and his thing was too is like I've already done window cleaning for 3 years or whatever. I'm at my ceiling. I don't know if I really want to do it anymore. And I get that, but like for me, having ITF or having this opportunity to share my experience, it has kind of reinvigorated that part of
absolutely
business, and like just like what he said, a lot of my joy in window cleaning isn't necessarily me going out and cleaning windows and making money. Now it's more the mentorship. One, I can give my techs and help them so that they can be the techs they need to be, but this whole national community and being able to help other people support their families and support other people's families.
I'm gonna pop a light on. Okay. It's getting dark here.
I was gonna say it looked like you were hibernating now. Yeah,
I don't know if this is gonna be any better, but
no, that's a lot better. Yeah. Well, now you don't look like this old man in the cabin.
Now my head's shiny though.
That's all right. We're just about wrapping up. We're right about an hour here, but it's good stuff, Mike. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. I've been wanting to talk with you for a while. I'm glad we finally coaxed you out to come in and join us. And there's a lot of Flowmies like that we really, we have a list of people we want to interview, and a lot of them just kind of keep saying no or saying, oh, we'll do it in next month, and they keep pushing it off, so
like me.
Hopefully we can get like you were a big fish that we finally landed.
No, it's no. Just I think you think like, what do I have to tell anyone that would make any sense that would help them at all? So that's more than I'm not avoiding you guys. It's just like I don't know if there's anything of value here.
We just literally talked for an hour, and there's a ton of solid nuggets in here that other people can use, and I think that's what is a hard sell for people, because I don't think people understand that they have things they can give. I think some people come and they're like, oh, well, what do I have to offer? I've only been cleaning windows this long, or I've only been this. And it's like, no, you have, because of your unique situation, whatever it may be, you have insight. We're all looking at kind of a diamond, and you're looking at this particular angle. And so you're getting a whole different reflection of the window cleaning world than this other person who's over on this side. So even if you may feel like, oh, I don't have anything to offer, just your point of view of that diamond is it's containing information that other people can benefit from, and that's what I love about the podcast.
I've tried to shy away from putting posts on Into the Flow like, hey, how much do you guys charge for this couch removal? They know it's mostly window cleaning, pressure washing, and anyone have any insights on how to get rid of this hot tub?
Yeah, we're probably not going to help you too much on that, but good. glad you got your friend to call on those things.
But it is cool, like you said with Phil. He connected when you mentioned my name or something. We connected, and we've talked a couple times on the phone. We text back and forth. Now he's sending me all the trucks he finds in Florida. Like, hey, if you want to, I'm looking for a second truck because we're starting to kind of outgrow the first truck already. As far as having enough volume on jobs. So I'm trying to find a second truck. He's sending me listings from, Orlando. I'm like, well, it's an easy sell for me to drive down there to drive a truck back to go to Florida. You're not calling me from wherever,
Right. Very
So,
cool. Well, thanks
it's
again,
fun.
Mike. Yeah, I appreciate it. Sorry, Corey couldn't join us, but like we mentioned, family first. So we're
Absolutely.
glad that he got to spend time with his family. But again,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I know
Thanks,
the Flowmies
Gabe.
are going to enjoy this interview, and thank you, Flowmies, for listening. We hope you guys have a great weekend. And as always, flow on.